back, friends. This is Yvonne Davis, your traveling warrior astrologer and author of The Power of Manifestation, Creating a Life You Love, and In the Magic Flow, a journey of personal transformation. Hello, friends. Well, here we are. It's time to talk about the new moon in Scorpio. So I am making and posting this video in late October, and we should be there, in a couple of weeks, maybe a little bit less than a couple of weeks. So keep this in mind so that you can be thinking about any seeds that you want to plant for the new moon. New moons are always great for setting intentions and planting seeds and taking action. So let's go look at that chart. All right, so here we have the new moon in Scorpio on November 4th at 5:14 p.m. on the East Coast. So you can adjust for your time zone. And as I mentioned, probably in my last video or the one before, that I was working my way down to Florida. So I have worked out my housing for the next 6 months, and I will be in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Now, let's go ahead and look at this new moon. All righty, so the thing that really jumps out is that this new moon is virtually exactly opposite Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus at 12 degrees, 47 minutes, and it's moving retrograde while the new moon is at 12 degrees Scorpio, 40 minutes. So you can see that's only a 7-minute difference. That's virtually exact. I mean, 7 minutes is nothing. So this is going to give us a little bit of electrical energy, and I might be a little more than you had hoped for. So we need to talk about Uranus, because virtually every new moon is about the new energy. We're moving into a new cycle. We're creating new things. We're setting intentions. We're planting seeds. We're taking action to make things happen. Okay. The energy is beginning to shift into a waxing phase. Things are growing. They're moving toward fruition. So we got that new energy. Okay. And then we've got this opposition to Uranus. And that's really what creates the flavor of this new moon. Now, the fact that it's in Scorpio, we need to take into account what is the meaning of the scorpionic energy and the house that it rules, which is the 8th house. This is the home of Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto, god of death in the underworld, but also the god of power and great wealth and transformation and rebirth. Okay. So we have these themes of birth and death and the underworld. Okay. So something new has been being born. And a lot of us have been going through a very transformational phase, especially with the Mercury retrograde and Pluto turning direct. I talked a lot about that in my recent videos. I talked about empowerment. I talked about going down into the underworld, meeting your shadow, and integrating that, because that is how you empower yourself. So I hope that a lot of you were able to look at the things that were happening during Mercury retrograde and understand how you are transforming. Usually what happens is the fear comes up first, okay? Because in the shadow are all the things that we fear and repress, okay? But that's also where our power is, because there's energy there that has been repressed because we are afraid of it, okay? So as an example, if you want greater power in your life, if you want greater authenticity in your life, greater integrity, because the words integrity and integration have the same etymological root, okay? They have the same basic meaning. And integrity is critical to a strong, powerful foundation, okay? There has to be that alignment within the self. That's integrity, that's authenticity, that's alignment, and that is where your power is, okay? So when we've repressed power into our shadow, we have basically disintegrated ourselves, okay? So we need to reintegrate that part of ourselves. So a lot of times this goes back to some kind of childhood wounding, or some way that, in a sense, our psyche was formed through our childhood experiences. So, for example, putting power into your shadow can happen for all kinds of reasons. And because we learned to survive when we were children, okay? But in a lot of ways, we sometimes had to put our power into the shadow in order to survive as children. And then decades later, we may or may not discover that we are still giving our power away. And what I'm trying to help you do through understanding astrology and what it's trying to bring into our awareness is to see that you can reintegrate your power. Okay, now that you're an adult, you can reintegrate your power, but you have to be able to see how you have repressed your power and put it into the shadow. Okay, so as an example, if you grew up around issues like around people who had fear around money or poverty mentality, you may have incorporated that into your own psyche and pushed away your power to attract wealth, okay? So that would be an example. That's totally related to eighth house issues. So what happens when you have a new moon with this opposition to Uranus is it's sort of like an injection, okay? You can actually kind of see that in your mind, how Uranus, it's like it's injecting its energy into the new moon, okay? And because of the nature of Uranus, it's almost like an electrical shock. And, you know, I have to say that of all the planets, Uranus is probably my least favorite because if you've ever experienced an electrical shock, you know it does not feel good. And with Uranus injecting its energy into the new moon, I am going to be walking very carefully past electrical plugs. Obviously, I'm being metaphorical here, but that is what it's like. It's like, you know, where is that shock going to come from? Because it doesn't feel good when it comes. But at the same time, that's the way Uranus works. It's like there's something you need to know, okay? And the only way you're going to get that wake-up call, that, you know, injection of knowledge, like injection from universal consciousness and intelligence, boom, when you need to get it, zap. And it'll come when you least expect it, and it'll come out of the blue in a way you don't expect it, and it doesn't feel good, but it's the way that it gets you to see what you needed to see, okay? So keep your eyes open for that. It's probably gonna come. Sometimes every once in a while we get lucky and we just get this really great inspiration, like a big old light bulb going off above our heads, and we're like, yes, that's exactly what I need to do. And then you can go out and do it. But I kind of think this one is going to have a little bit of a sting with it. And when I say sting, I'm really trying to be more aware myself of how much of that sting is external and how much of it is internal. Because the fact is, you cannot get triggered unless you have a trigger for someone to push, okay? That's you. So if you get triggered, you may think it's external. We always want to think it's external. I fall for it all the time too. I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they said that. Who do they think they are? They have no right. You know, those are the things we say to ourselves when we get triggered around these things. And sometimes what happens literally is unjust, because Uranus doesn't care. Uranus, in a sense, is the planet of chaos. It doesn't care how it gives you the wake-up call. And so, in some sense, you have to be very aware that you are doing your part to keep things in order, okay? So that it's like it can absorb the chaos of Uranus. So as an example, one of the things it might try to make you aware of is how you feel powerless, okay? That was one of the lessons I had years ago around Uranus, and probably Pluto as well, to realize that, I'll give you an example. Driving down 17th Avenue in Denver, in East Denver along City Park, they have this speed trap. It's one of those, it's like a van, it's a photo radar, that's what it is. And so I had gotten hit by that twice because I wasn't paying attention. I was in a hurry, and ended up costing me $40 each time. So a total of $80 just to drive down that road 2 times. So I made a promise with myself that the next time I drove down that road, I would definitely pay attention. I would be very careful, and I would intentionally drive below the speed limit to make absolutely sure I did not get a ticket. So I'm driving along, and I get close to the photo radar. I'm watching my speed. I'm under the speed limit. Flash, the bulb goes off. I just went into a tailspin, and it took me at least 24 hours to come out of it. And what I learned from that, later I found out that someone who knew something about these photo radars said that they actually flash like indiscriminately, because the flash has nothing to do with the photo radar. It's like it's a warning. It's like they just do it randomly as a warning. It has nothing to do with the actual photo radar. That's what I was told. As it turned out, I never did get a ticket. So maybe there was some truth to that. But the fact is when I looked deeply at what was happening to me psychologically and emotionally, because I had seen this pattern like kept coming up over and over and over again in a very short period of time. And I saw that what was happening to me was that I would find myself in situations where I had done everything perfectly, and yet I was punished. And that's what I thought in that situation. I did everything right. I did everything I was supposed to do, and yet I was being punished. And that took me back to my childhood experience of my childhood abuse, which I have mentioned on this channel before. And some of you who've, worked with me one-on-one also know the story, because I do tend to share it to help others understand that it's safe to be vulnerable and to tell the truth of what has happened in your childhood, because a lot of us do have wounding in our childhood. And so what was happening for me was that the issues of Pluto and power and my shadow and my childhood wounding were getting triggered in this way that I would think I did everything right, and yet I'm still being punished. I am powerless. And so it was really painful. But the fact is that because I had enough consciousness to recognize this is a story that I live inside, and I do have the power to change this story, to transform this story. And as I began to see that, and I began to work with that shadow material, and I began to integrate my power, I stopped having those kinds of experiences. That's all I can say. I just simply don't have those kinds of experiences anymore. So something transformed. And it happens because you begin to see the story that you're living inside. You see the story that you're creating in your reality, and you think it's external. You think that person is doing something to you. You think the government is doing something to you. You think that photo radar van is doing something to you. You think that tow company who towed your car is doing something to you. And unless we begin to take back the power, which power equates to 100% responsibility. And I cannot explain how that works. It is almost like magic, but it does work. As soon as you begin to take 100% responsibility for everything that's happening in your reality, even the things that seem to be out of your control, even those things, when you take 100% responsibility for them, and some people are going to hate me for this. I'm probably getting a lot of hate comments for this, but I have seen it work. As soon as you take 100% responsibility for what's happening in your reality and ask yourself, why is that in my reality? It will begin to transform. And once it transforms, those kinds of situations will actually stop happening to you. So, all I can say is, if you don't believe me, just try, okay? Just give it a try, because I know for a fact that it works. And the hardest thing is to have that conversation with yourself and to say, can I take ownership of this thing that's happening? Can I own it? Can I take responsibility for it? Or at least for what it's bringing up inside me? Can I own that? And if you can, then you're on the path to transforming it. And those experiences will actually begin to fade out of your life. So let's take a slightly deeper dive into this new moon opposite Uranus. And notice that Mars is also very close to the new moon, which means that it's going to move into an opposition to Uranus. It'll first square Saturn, because Saturn is in a square here by 5 degrees. It's a 5-degree orb, so it's not, it's, kind of a wide orb, but it may have some impact, which is Saturn is the authority, okay? So we may want freedom, and we may feel like some kind of external authority is taking away our freedom and power, okay? Just like when I talked about the photo radar, it would be something like that, okay? Obviously, it's not going to be however it's going to show up in your life is going to be nothing like the way it showed up in my life. So just keep that in mind. Maybe you're going to be concerned about photo radar, but I'm just saying, if you start to think that you know what it's going to be, you're going to be wrong, because Uranus is always going to get you in a way you never could have imagined. So don't even try to figure out what it's going to be. In fact, I like to play a game with myself if I get nervous about Uranus and how it's going to maybe zap me. I would play this game where I would try to think of everything I could possibly imagine, everything, and either make a mental note of it or write it down and just like totally brainstorm everything I could possibly think of. And it won't be that. I can promise you, it won't be any of those things. That's the way Uranus works. It's very bizarre. But when we get Mars moving in there, squaring Saturn, and then moving into an opposition with Uranus, it may re-trigger, okay? And Mars is the warrior. It wants to take action. Sometimes in a square to Saturn, it's forced to stay behind the gate, like a racehorse behind the gate. It wants to move forward, but Saturn is the gate, or like a race car pushing on the gas, revving the engine, but also has the brake on, can't move forward. And that can create some feelings of frustration. Okay. That can even bring up rage if you're dealing with issues around powerlessness and that you haven't yet owned as your repressed power in your shadow. So what we're working with all the time with these energies is integration. So when the moon, which will happen later that day or early the next day, and when the sun makes its sextile of Pluto, and by then we'll probably even already have the full moon. I think the full moon's at 27 degrees. So it's going to be in a sextile and trine to Pluto. So from the time of that new moon, when something will come up that is very triggering for you, that tells you what you need to work on to reintegrate the power that you've repressed into your shadow, by the time you get to the full moon, you will have had an opportunity to work with integrating that power, because by then you will have the trine and sextile to Pluto. Okay. So I hope that gives you some understanding of, the kinds of things that might come up with this new moon. Don't be afraid of it. And not at all. In fact, if you are nervous about it, play that game I told you about. List everything that could possibly happen, because you'll know it's not going to be any of those things. And just trust that Uranus is trying to, in a sense, give you a wake-up call. It's sending a lightning bolt into your skull, into your consciousness, to crack you open, to help you see something you couldn't see before. And if we're lucky, it just comes as a big light bulb and there's no sting to it. So with Venus at 29 degrees, she's also getting the download from the galactic center, and she's the ruler of Uranus. So it might come a little easier just because of that. Like I've said in my last video, Venus tries to make things a little more gentle for us. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. And I look forward to reading your comments. And also, hopefully, I will be able to interact with my patrons on Zoom very soon, maybe even before the end of this month. And I also hope once I get settled in my new place that I will be able to do some of those live streams on YouTube. All right, so that's it for today, and I will see you again in my next video. Bye-bye.